Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got Jocelyn with me, and we're going to be talking about the idea of a minimum viable product or an MVP. But before I get into the questions that I've got for you, can you give everybody a quick introduction?
Thank you, Emma, for having me. This is great. I love watching your show, so really excited to join. Jocelyn Getson. I head up, I'm a Chief Growth Officer for Bindable. So really leading our marketing, our business development, and kind of how we expand into our go-to-market strategy. So this is a great topic. Digital transformation is something near and dear to my heart too. So looking forward to talking more to you about it.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. So I guess to get us started, for anybody that might not be in with our acronyms and what we mean when we say MVP, can you give everybody kind of a starting definition as we get going with the discussion?
Yes. Well, since, insurance or any digital world, the more acronyms, the better. So just kidding, because it's pretty endless. But MVP is one that you're going to start hearing a lot, and hopefully you're already using in your own company. Minimal viable product. So really, just instead of taking on and trying to boil the entire ocean, starting in one place, identifying what your hypothesis is, and really getting that minimal viable to market and start to learn.
So I guess, why would you suggest this approach for companies going through a digital transformation? And what are some of the advantages of kind of taking that, not boiling the ocean, but kind of minimum viable product approach?
It's one that we're seeing, and it's been, I think, some of the biggest companies out there, whether it's Amazon, Airbnb, Virgin Airlines, they all started with like the simplest approach they could. And have obviously grown into massive companies. So I think sometimes when people hear minimal, they think it's going to be small, or it's a small undertaking, and it's not. It's about developing your blue sky idea. Where do you want to be? What do you see your company or your product doing? And then backing that up to where do you begin? And that can be the most overwhelming part, because we can all sit around and whiteboard and ideate and have a hackathon and dream up these big ideas of what we think the market's going to want. But the sooner you can get to market, the faster you're really going to learn not only what is working, but maybe what's not working, getting that data, improving, and iterating. So I think the key is that you're never finished with a product. So when you're thinking about digital transformation, whether it's, revamping your claims process, whether it's a go-to-market digital front end. At Bindable, we do a lot of alternative distribution for insurance. So we have a lot of people who are just diving into digital insurance, and it can feel overwhelming. They have a way that's been successful for decades of how they do it. So how do we make it not overwhelming and just start somewhere? And so I think that's always the key, is how do you back it up? What is your hypothesis? If you think, based on consumer research, market research, that, as an example, consumers want frictionless claims, or consumers want easy access to relevant products, doesn't matter what industry you're in. Those are market ideas, and those are just facts in the marketplace that we're seeing based on all of the consumer research. So how can your product improve there? So starting with minimal is really identifying, is there something that we can just test and learn and get our first sale? And it's really more about the process than the product at that point. It's about, what is our process? What do we think is going to work? And learning from there.
You're speaking my language. The idea of just getting started somewhere and then focusing on the process versus the product is something that I talk so much about. So I love to hear that is something we're on the same page with. So as companies are looking to kind of develop this MVP, what are some critical components that they need to have defined before they move into this process to make sure that they're successful with this approach?
I think the main thing that I find is that you have to have and I'll say it a lot, but you have to have a clear hypothesis. You have to be very much internally aligned on what it is you're trying to prove. And there are times, especially in a whiteboard session, or when you're having high-level strategic conversations, where you can have a difference of opinion. And so internally, and so before you want to go all in on something, sometimes the MVP, the goal of the minimal viable, is just to gain that internal alignment. So if I think something's going to perform, if I think my customers want hamburgers and you think our customers want salads, how can we test that theory? Maybe we just start offering hamburgers. We don't get that traction. So then we try salads. Maybe you try both, but it's about what is the hypothesis? Ideally, though, you can both agree we want hamburgers and you start there. Right. But sometimes I have seen the minimal viable be really a proof point for the business itself. And then they get that consumer feedback of okay, they bought the first one. How did that work? Any kind of data, surveys, any of that real-time feedback that you can get from the consumer is going to inform what your next step is and where you invest. And I think the key is that you're going to determine if you want to go all in and invest. You're going to find maybe you pivot, you learn something new and you say, oh, we really thought this, but if we just adapt a little bit more and we go in a different direction. And sometimes you'll discover that it just doesn't work and it wasn't a fit and we were wrong. And none of that is a failure. All of that is a learning opportunity and a way to quickly you haven't hopefully spent a lot of money because it's your minimal viable to really iterate and start to build what your final product might be.
Thank you so much for taking some time to talk through this with me. For anybody that isn't already, make sure you make your way over to Jocelyn's LinkedIn and follow her there. And be sure to reach out to either one of us if you have any questions. But I thank you again and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
If you're looking for expert tips on how to get started with your transformation or looking to hone in on your approach, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to catch our weekly Digital Transformation Talk series, where we interview experts from around the world on how to make it happen.